The last commission of HMS Ark Royal has been as active and demanding as any of that went before. The ship has been the flagship of the Silver Jubilee Review, has taken part in 5 major international exercises, and has been thrust into the limelight more than ever before by a successful television series. Being the last commission of the last CVA, the ship has attracted more interest from both the media and the public than any other ship in the fleet. It's a tribute to every man on board that wherever she has been and whatever she has done, Ark Royal has emerged with credit, and this is a welcome opportunity for me to say well done and thank you to the ship's company for keeping the ship fully operational right up to the end of the commission, not forgetting the support that we've all had from our wives and families. They also deserve a big thank you. The name Ark Royal certainly has a majestic ring, and our present ship is the 4th in the history of the Royal Navy to bear it. The first ship to be called Ark Royal was built at Deptford for Sir Walter Raleigh in 1586, who in fact named her Ark Raleigh, as the custom in those days was for ships to bear their owners' names. Queen Elizabeth I bought the ship in January 1587 for £5,000 while it was still on the stocks, and she was renamed Ark Royal in the following June. When the Armada approached England in 1588, Lord Howard of Effingham, the Lord High Admiral of England, hoisted his flag on the 800-ton, 38-gun Ark Royal, and she took part in the first encounter with the Spanish off Plymouth, and continued in battle until the decisive action at Gravelines. She saw further action against the Spanish, until in 1608 she was rebuilt and renamed the Anne Royal, in honour of James I's wife, Anne of Denmark. The Anne Royal was eventually broken up in 1636 after a series of mishaps, including being sunk in the Thames. 300 years passed before the second Ark Royal was commissioned. She was a merchant ship built at Blyth, Northumberland, when, at the outbreak of war in 1914, she was bought for the Royal Navy and converted into a plain carrier of 7,400 tons. Ark Royal sailed from England early in 1915 with 6 seaplanes and 2 aeroplanes embarked, and joined the Mediterranean fleet at Malta. During the war, her main roles were that of conducting reconnaissance, spotting and photographic flights, and she was present at the Dardanelles campaign and the Gallipoli landings. During 1920, while operating in the Black Sea, Ark helped with the evacuation of Russian refugees from the revolution. In 1923, on her return to England, Ark Royal went into the reserve fleet at Chatham, and in December 1934 was renamed HMS Pegasus. She was used as a trial ship for catapults, aircraft recovery and general training. During the early years of the Second World War, Pegasus was recalled into active service and used as a catapult carrier, escorting Atlantic convoys. In July 1941, she returned to the role of catapult training duties once more, before being sold in 1946, when she was renamed Anita I, before being broken up in 1950. The second Ark Royal was renamed HMS Pegasus after it had been decided to name the aircraft carrier of the 1934 shipbuilding programme Ark Royal. The third ship to bear this proud name was laid down on the 16th of September in 1935 at the Camel Laird shipyard in Birkenhead. She was the first in the Royal Navy to be laid down as an aircraft carrier, and the 22,000-ton ship was launched on the 13th of April 1937. After being commissioned on the 16th of November 1938, she became the flagship of Vice Admiral aircraft carriers, and during the Second World War she had a wide variety of roles. By the 14th of September she had been attacked by U-boats, and by the end of the month one of Ark's Skua aircraft had the distinction of shooting down the first enemy aircraft of the Luftwaffe to be destroyed in the war. Her other roles included the search for the Graf Spee in the South Atlantic during 1939, the Norwegian campaign in April and May of 1940, and in June 1940 she took part in the attacks on the French fleet at Oran when France had fallen to the Germans. She then joined the famous H-Force based on Gibraltar and took part in many successful operations during the following 15 months in the Mediterranean, including convoys to Malta and in the operation which ended in the sinking of the Bismarck. Repeatedly, the Germans claimed in their propaganda war that the Ark Royal had been sunk, the first time being as early as 26th of September 1939. but she finally met her end at 06:13 on the 14th of November 1941 when, having been torpedoed the previous afternoon by a U-boat, she turned over and sank within sight of Gibraltar. The present ship was originally one of two carriers which were included in the 1940 Supplementary Building Programme and was to be named HMS Irresistible. However, on the 7th of February 1942, King George VI gave permission for the name to be changed to Ark Royal. When the keel of this Ark Royal was laid down at Camberwell Shipyard on the 3rd of May 1943 by the late Princess Marina Duchess of Kent, the city of Leeds had already adopted the fourth Ark. It was on the 4th of November 1941 that the long and agreeable association between Ark Royal and the city of Leeds began, when the City Fathers, in preparation for Warship Week, decided to adopt the third Ark Royal as an incentive to raise funds for the war effort. 10 days later, the ship sank. Such was the wave of emotion that swept the country in the wake of the disaster that the target set for the campaign was exceeded and over £9 million was invested by the people of Leeds. In recognition of the city's efforts, the privilege of adopting the new Ark Royal was reserved for Leeds, and adoption was officially confirmed on the 19th of September 1942. Lloyd's of London also adopted the ship, and both of these ties remain as strong today as they were in the early days of the ship's life. When she was launched on the 3rd of May 1950 by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Ark Royal, with a displacement of 36,700 tons and a length of 810 feet, was the largest ship in the Royal Navy. For the next 5 years, the ship remained in Birkenhead, while all the latest developments in aircraft carrier flying techniques and associated equipment were incorporated, and by the time she was commissioned on the 25th of February 1955, she was the biggest and most modern ship in the Royal Navy. The launching of the Ark was the beginning of the Queen Mother's association with the ship, and in the commissioning edition of Noah's News on February 1955, the following message from Her Majesty was printed. "I'm most happy to send a message of goodwill to Ark Royal and all her company. She bears a name which has won great renown through all the long years of this country's mastery of the seas. Those who set forth in her have a proud inheritance and a great name to uphold. I do not doubt that they will bring to her service the loyalty, seamanship and courage which is her right, and I send my good wishes to all who put to sea again in the Ark Royal." The Ark Royal, with her 5.5-degree angled deck, was commanded by Captain D.R.F. Campbell, DSC-RN, who had evolved the angled flight deck concept some years earlier. After various workups and trials around the coasts of the UK and a spell in the Gibraltar area, the first flying trials took place in June-July. The aircraft of this period were the Seahawks, 800 and 898 squadrons, and Sea Venoms from 809 and 891 squadrons. Ark Royal had numerous commissions and refit periods after 1955, and during each refit, the latest aids available for operating aircraft were incorporated. From 1955 until October 1966, when Ark Royal went to Devonport for a 3-year major refit, she roamed the high seas as part of Britain's fixed-wing carrier force, and during the period had 5 commissions. The aim of the 3-year £32 million refit and modernisation plan was to enable the ship to operate the latest aircraft. The decks and the hangars were phantomised, and the angled deck extended to 8.5 degrees. And during this period, Ark was ripped to pieces and slowly put back together again, so that at the end she emerged as the largest and most powerful warship ever to join the Royal Navy. The ship was recommissioned on the 24th of February 1970 at Devonport with Captain Ligo in command. The first incident of this 6th commission to receive worldwide attention occurred on the 9th of November 1970 while the ship was operating in the Mediterranean. Ark Royal collided with a Russian Sam Kotlin-class destroyer. From then until the present day, Ark Royal has continued to be newsworthy. She continued to operate on the high seas, but now, within the NATO role, she was limited to the North Atlantic, North Sea and Mediterranean. And for our final deployment in 1978, we're going to follow a similar pattern to previous recent deployments. Nowadays in the Royal Navy, it is difficult to say when one commission ends and the next one begins. As far as HMS Ark Royal is concerned, Captain E.R. Anson, the ship's last commanding officer, arrived on board off Scotland on the 25th of September as the ship headed south to the warmer climates of Lisbon. On assuming command on the 28th of September from Captain Graham, who left to take up his new appointment as Flag Officer Portsmouth, the new father was soon seen by most of the ship's company when ceremonial divisions were held in whites at Lisbon. While at Lisbon, 824 Squadron were once again able to demonstrate their skills in times of need when they transferred a sick rating from the Portuguese submarine Barracuda, 75 miles out in the Atlantic, to a hospital ashore for an operation. The visit to Lisbon was short, and despite the fact that the jellyfish of the River Tagus used the ship's underwater openings as a sanctuary, Ark Royal managed to sail on the 2nd of October and head straight into the Mediterranean for exercise display determination. Various ships made a fine sight as some of them passed through the Straits of Gibraltar in formation. Ark Royal was one of the 4 carriers which took part in the exercise, the others being US ships Nimitz in America and the French ship Clemenceau. Ark Royal in America operated off the coast of Sardinia, and the opportunity was taken for the interchange of squadron personnel between the 2 ships during the latter stages of the exercise. The American Tomcats certainly brought a lot of sailors to the goofing decks. On completion of the exercise, Ark went to Toulon on the French Mediterranean coast on the 13th of October for a 5-day visit. While at Toulon, a team of planners and workmen arrived from Devonport Dockyard to start preparing for the refit that was to take place once the ship reached Devonport. We bade farewell to Toulon on the 18th, and the same day the fixed-wing element disembarked to their bases in the UK, and, despite unfavourable weather and minor problems with the catapults, all of the aircraft were launched and safely reached their destinations. 2 helicopters of 824 Squadron also returned home via France, leaving the remainder to help with the vast destoring effort. Finally, after a popular overnight stop at Gibraltar on the 20th and the 21st of October, Ark Royal set off on the final leg of the journey home. En route, a massive backraz of ammunition, stores and fuel to the accompanying RFAs was successfully completed. The ship entered Plymouth Sound early on the morning of the 25th of October and secured at 0700, a unique event because the whole entry was completed in the dark. For some, it was goodbye to their home of recent months, while for the remainder and the grand old lady herself, the refit lay ahead. The story of the ship's 7th and last planned normal refit began much earlier than the scheduled starting date of the 22nd of November. Preparations had started early in the year when defect lists had been prepared, and the refit was planned around these lists. Dockyard personnel who had flown out to Toulon to prepare the groundwork started on the catapults as soon as the fixed-wing had disembarked, and inside the ship, hardboard began to cover the passageways and mess decks. Alongside at Devonport, a 4-week pre-fit period began to prepare the ship for the onslaught that would follow, and tank-cleaning vessels, lighters and dockside cranes were in constant use. At the refit conference on the 9th of November, everyone concerned had a clearer idea of the work to be done and the difficulties to be overcome. All appreciated the necessity of containing the refit within the 28 weeks allowed if the ship was to make its appearance as the flagship at the Silver Jubilee Review in June 1977. To bring some relaxation into the proceedings, the BBC returned to the ship on the 18th of November in the form of BBC Enterprises. They recorded the ship's company singing Sailing and the Wombles song for release as a record, following the success of the BBC TV series Sailor, which had made Ark Royal a nationwide celebrity. 2 members of the WE department, OEM's David Turner and Alan Gould, did their thing for charity by completing a 333-mile sponsored walk between the 22nd of November and the 11th of December. Their efforts raised £700 for 10-year-old Tracy Brown of Sowerley Bridge near Halifax, who suffers from tunnel vision. While the walk was underway, the ship's company took part in a shorter walk when they moved into HMS Drake during November, and the ship became a place of work only. By the 13th of December, everything was ready for Ark to be moved gently from the outer wall to the safety of No. 10 dry dock. The state of the hull was found to be considerably better than had been expected, and work began on refitting sea tubes, rudders, and the main shaft outer bearings as the ship disappeared under a mantle of scaffolding. During the dry dock period, the ship continued to maintain its strong ties with the city of Leeds, when personnel from Ark Royal participated in a week-long exhibition in mid-February which covered all aspects of the Royal Navy, A strong contingent comprising of guard and band marched through the city streets before the Lord Mayor, accompanied by Captain Anson, opened the exhibition. By the 28th of February 1977, all the necessary work in the dry dock had been completed ahead of schedule, and Ark was floated once more, undocked through the narrow gates, and guided to the outer seawall berth again. On the 21st of March, Vice Admiral Eberly, on leaving the flag officer carrier's and amphibious ship's chair, visited the Ark Royal, and as a farewell gesture the captain presented him with a framed photograph of her, which had been his flagship on numerous occasions. By the 13th of April, the accommodation and galleys were ready for use, and the ship's company moved back on board. All the time, work in hand was being completed and machinery spaces began to take shape as refitted items reappeared from the dockyard workshops. Machine systems were tried, tested and adjusted and set to work, and it was with some satisfaction when the first puffs of black smoke emerged from the funnel, announcing that Ark Royal was coming back to life. The terminal date inspection by the dockyard general manager took place on the 6th of May, and although there was still a great deal of refitting work to be done, besides the cleaning up and painting, he confidently predicted that the completion date would be achieved. The ME department achieved a fine performance away from the ship in the 1977 10 Tours walk on Dartmoor over the weekend of the 21st and 22nd of March. The Bilge Rats, as the team were known, was made up of MEMs from A Unit, and they showed their true mettle by being the first team from a seagoing ship to complete the full 55-mile course. The Bilge Rats fully deserved their team certificate and individual medals, and a lot of the credit must go to team manager Fleet Chief MEM Les Sutton, who started their training in January and ensured they were fit to complete the course. The ship's basin trial was successful, indicating that all had gone well in the depth of the ship. The work on the catapults was completed much to everyone's relief, and the catapult deadload trials were successfully completed by the end of May and proved to be a popular spectator activity. To show they could do things well, the seamen demonstrated their knowledge in the manoeuvre known as Wind Ship on the 26th of May, when the ship was turned through 180 degrees on the dockyard wall. The final few days of May saw much activity, with the final tidying up, cleaning and painting, and readiness for the completion day inspection on June the 1st by Flag Officer Plymouth Vice Admiral Forbes and his staff. The hard work by everyone, ship staff and dockyard personnel, was rewarded with the assessment that we had done a good job and that he was well pleased with the final result. It was then a case of preparing the ship and the ship's company's new members ready for sea. At last the ship was ours, and each department set about its preparations for sailing. A new evolution for Ark Royal was carried out on the 8th and 9th of June with the introduction of a fast cruise. The ship remained alongside, but we went through the various motions of being at sea, testing men as well as machinery. Despite the fact that most of us were comparatively new to Ark Royal and were still trying to find our way around the mighty vessel, to sea we had to go, and we slipped and proceeded from the comforts of 5 and 6th berth at 11:45 on the 9th of June. The Air Department embarked 3 Sea Kings of 824 Squadron from the 13th to the 17th of June to assist in their trials. These included deck landing practice and carrier-controlled approaches. Fixed Wing took over and did their deck landing practice and controlled carrier approaches, leaving their marks on the nice clean flight deck. While all the trials were taking place, the ship continued to function, with the Seaman Department having manoeuvres and numerous other exercises. A RAS and usual daily tasks. The HDS continued to provide our link with the mainland and mail. Stores and visitors were the usual loads. The most important visitor of this phase was Flag Officer carriers and amphibious ships, who spent Tuesday the 14th on board touring the mess decks and machinery spaces and making a number of presentations. There were lighter moments too. Potted sports on a beautiful sunny Sunday afternoon helped a lot to relax and was won by the Air Department. And meanwhile the ship continued to transit the measured mile off Loo Bar. The initial trials came to an end on Sunday the 19th, when civilians disembarked at Charlie Boy, and we then proceeded to Portsmouth for the Silver Jubilee Review. Ark Royal finally arrived alongside Middleslip Jetty on the afternoon of Monday the 20th of June, much to the delight of Portsmouth natives. The following few days saw final preparations taking place for the review. BBC TV brought their equipment on board for live coverage of the review, and the ship's company continued to clean and paint. On Thursday afternoon the 23rd of June, Commander-in-Chief Fleet Admiral Sir Henry Leach, GCB, embarked by helicopter from his headquarters at Northwood. We slipped from our berth as the flagship of the fleet and sailed to our position at Spithead. By means of specially produced souvenir charts, the navigating officer found the spot marked HMS Ark Royal, and we dropped our anchor, and here we were to remain, swinging with the tides during the next few days. As the fleet flagship, the ship became involved with ceremonial duties on a grand scale. The ship managed to rehearse man and cheer ship procedure, especially the hooray, as well as the continual process of cleaning ship so that it would be fit for a queen. Sunday the 26th was a little more relaxed, and during the morning, a Jubilee Thanksgiving service was held in the after end of the upper hangar. The service was conducted by the chaplain of the fleet and Archdeacon for the Royal Navy, the Venerable B.A. O'Farrell. He was assisted by the Principal Chaplain, Church of Scotland and Free Churches, the Reverend J.C. Creeber, and the Principal Roman Catholic Chaplain, the Right Reverend Monsignor Walmsley. During the afternoon, official receptions took place, as well as visits from our own families, and they had the opportunity of viewing the lines of ship from the vantage positions of the flight deck. Throughout the weekend, hundreds of pleasure craft and fishing vessels and even canoes came to see the ships at anchor. It was a picturesque scene with all the grey hulks of the warships towering above the sightseers. Monday the 27th was the final rehearsal day, and we manned and cheered ship again. First by ourselves, and then in the afternoon there was a full review rehearsal with RFA Engadine acting as HMY Britannia. On completion of the review of ships, the flypast by rotary and fixed-wing aircraft of the Fleet Air Arm was rehearsed. As it turned out, this was the only occasion that we witnessed the full flypast by the fixed-wing aircraft. From the time we arrived at Spithead and throughout the period we remained there, we were inundated with visitors. Mostly they were official calls on C&C Fleet, but the press came too with their notebooks, and the TV stations turned up with their cameras and all sorts of equipment. 2 live television events took place from Ark Royal's flight deck. BBC's Blue Peter programme introduced a special feature, and later in the evening sunset and the illumination of the fleet were televised for a BBC programme Silver Jubilee, which was introduced by Richard Baker. At last, the big day had arrived, and the customary poor weather which seems to plague the Queen on big occasions was also present. We were informed that the afternoon wouldn't be spoilt by rain, but that it would be cold and windy, and how right they were according to those who stood on the flight deck. Families and official guests began arriving during the early forenoon, and HMY Britannia sailed from Portsmouth. As she passed the Spit Refuge buoy at 11:19, the fleet fired a 21-gun salute, and the Royal Yacht took up her position at the head of the review lines. By 14:30, the Royal Yacht had entered the review lines, preceded by the Trinity House vessel Patricia. Astern of Britannia came HMS Birmingham, with members of the Admiralty Board and their guests, followed by the RFA's Engadine, Sir Geraint, Sir Tristram and Lioness, with the press and official guests embarked. As the Royal Yacht approached Ark Royal's port quarter, the alert was sounded and the ship's company smartly came to attention. The guard and the band did their bit, whilst the remainder of the ship's company on the flight deck and weather decks gave the traditional hip hip hooray 3 times to Her Majesty the Queen. That was it for about 2 hours, and the next time we saw Britannia at close hand was when she passed to starboard on completion of the reviewing of fleet on her way to position at the head of the review lines. Once Britannia had anchored, we waited for the flypast by helicopters of the Fleet Air Arm, led by a former captain of Ark Royal, but on this occasion as Flag Officer Naval Air Command, Rear Admiral John Roberts. Unfortunately, the expected flypast of 150 fixed and rotary wing machines was curtailed because of the weather conditions. I think we saw about 90 helicopters and that was it. On completion of the flypast, over 200 ratings of all ranks and ages from the Royal Navy and Commonwealth Navies who had assembled in Ark Royal during the day were taken to the Royal Yacht to attend a reception given by Her Majesty the Queen. Her Majesty the Queen and Prince Philip, along with other members of the royal family, mingled informally with the ratings. To complete the day, Her Majesty the Queen was guest of honour at a banquet held in the upper hangar of Ark Royal, which was given by flag and commanding officers. Also present, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, His Royal Highness Prince Charles, and Admiral of the Fleet Lord Louis Mountbatten. The hangar had been transformed for the event by means of red and white bunting and highly polished decks. It did look fit for a queen. And so ended a historic day, and the contents of the signal that we had all been hoping for were soon known throughout the ship. Splice the main brace. When we weighed anchor on the 29th of June, the ship headed for the southern side of the Isle of Wight, where HMS Ark Royal led the steam past of 61 British warships. The fleet were acknowledging the retirement as Chief of the Defence Staff of Admiral of the Fleet, Sir Edward Ashmore, GCB DSC, who was embarked in HMS Birmingham. The line of ships stretched as far as the eye could see. During the afternoon, C&C Fleet left us with the following signal. Ark Royal has been a worthy successor in the long and proud line of fleet flag ships of Royal Reviews at Spithead. I'm particularly aware of the immense effort put in by everyone at all levels to get the ship up to a standard which I have not seen surpassed and which you achieved so soon after the refit. Very well done, and best wishes for the commission ahead. All the formalities and ceremonial duties were now complete, and the ship could once more assume the role of an aircraft carrier undergoing post-refit trials. On completion of the steam past and C&C's fleet disembarkation, the ship went into a pre-wetting trial as we continued to sail westwards towards Plymouth. The morning of the 30th of June saw Ark once more in Corsan Bay, where the flight deck trials team was embarked. Once all the civilian personnel were on board, we were off again into the English Channel to embark the mini-carrier airborne group of 3 Phantoms, 3 Buccaneers and 3 Gannets. There was real excitement as the aircraft arrived and all the goofing positions were manned. First, the deck landing practices took place in order to get a feel for the deck, followed by the actual hook-on, and all aircraft were recovered safely during the day. Once on board, they were moved about the flight deck and the hangars, followed by cold and then hot loading trials at the launch positions. The Badgers tested the jet blast deflectors, the catapults, the arrestor gear and other flight deck equipment. Everyone gained valuable experience and all was ready for the first launches and subsequent recoveries on Sunday the 3rd of July. For many of the ship's company, the most important occasion of this flights period was the tot issue on the 30th of June, when we spliced the main brace. Due to the operational programme, this was the first opportunity that arose for the event. In anticipation that the order would be given, the ship had obtained enough genuine Pusser's rum and a rum tub to carry out a traditional grog issue to splice the main brace for everyone on board over the age of 18. The occasion brought back nostalgic memories to the more senior members of the ship's company as the grog was issued and later consumed. To others under 18, they couldn't see what all the fuss and excitement was about. As usual, the ship continued to receive its stream of visitors, and 2 groups left their mark in one way or another around the ship. On the 30th of June, 4 BBC Radio and Record Department representatives came to see how we function. Those from the record company BBC Enterprises presented the ship with a commemorative disc of the records Sailing and Wombling, while Radio 2 representative gave us a selection of about 50 long-playing records to use on the SRE. In complete contrast, the members of the Cartoonist Club of Great Britain left their mark in another way on the 6th of July, and their sketches and cartoons could be seen all around the ship. During this particular phase of our trials, the ship was called upon to give assistance on numerous occasions. The first was in the early hours of the 1st of July when we went to the aid of the yacht Pegasus, which required assistance as she was taking water. When Chief Shipwright Anthony Crampton transferred to the yacht, he discovered that the water was fresh and that the fresh water tanks had burst. The second incident occurred on the 5th of July, again at night, and we were asked to look out for a motor vessel Albatross which had broken down. The vessel was soon located, and our engineers Lieutenant Michael Grundy and mechanician Bill Williamson decided that the repairs could not be done at sea, and the vessel was towed to Falmouth by a second motor vessel, the John Mitchell, which had also answered the distress call. The third incident occurred on the 7th of July when we were asked by the oil rig Zephyr 1 if diving assistance could be provided to help clear one of its anchors that had become fouled during mooring operations. A team of 7 divers, led by Lieutenant Stuart McClelland, were flown to the rig, and within 3 hours they had completed the job. The Fly-X, in fact, completed a day earlier than expected, and buzzes were high that we would be alongside in Devonport before the weekend. Unfortunately, our hopes were dashed and we remained secured to Charlie Boy throughout the weekend. To make matters even worse, strong winds prevented the ship from entering harbour on the 11th, and it wasn't until Tuesday the 12th of July that we finally berthed alongside for leave, post-sea trial rectifications and modifications, and, of course, Plymouth Navy Days over the bank holiday period. The strenuous effort made by all departments for Navy Days resulted in 31,648 visitors thoroughly enjoying their time on board during the 3 days we were open to the public. The time alongside went far too quickly, and we sailed again on the 1st of September for the real work-up to bring us back up to a state of operational readiness. Drama soon raised its head, for, during our first RAS with the RFA's Lioness and Almeida, EMA Murray and REM Tomlinson of 892 Squadron decided to go for a swim via a large wave which swept them over the side. The SAR was quickly launched and soon had the two back on board, none the worse for their 9-minute experience. Following the incident, Ark continued its passage towards Southwest Ireland and up the west coast of Ireland. The ship experienced a good swell which gave rise to murmurs in the stomachs of the ship's company. Despite the sea, we all managed to overcome our problems, and Sunday the 4th of September saw the ship at the southern end of the Minches for its day cruise northward through the Western Isles. On arrival at the ship's old hunting grounds of the Moray Firth, the fixed-wing aircraft were embarked safely throughout the 5th. The flight deck personnel soon became accustomed to the aircraft on their patch, and launch, recovery, duskers, night flying and K-Secs became common discussions about the ship as once more she assumed the role of a busy and exciting floating airfield. Throughout the first phase of bringing the air and ground crews up to some form of readiness, the remainder of the ship went about their own business. For the majority on board, there was a lot to learn during this first phase of the ship's work-up. Needless to say, the ship had a continuous stream of visitors, and among those were branch leaders of two of our smallest groups. The Director of Naval Education Service, Rear Admiral Bell, came on the 6th of September, and Colonel Balian came to look at one of his sections, the 55 Carrier-Borne Ground Liaison section. Both spent several enjoyable days with us. The work-up appeared to go well, and we rounded this phase off with a visit to the Firth of Forth. The ship secured on Thursday the 15th of September to No. 1 Buoy, some 6 miles from Leith, and on the north side of the river. For Scottish and North of England natives, there was an opportunity of a long weekend with their families. For the remainder, there were receptions, visits, tours, and of course shopping expeditions to the fine old city of Edinburgh. The only disappointment of the visit was the 5-mile boat ride to get ashore, and thanks must go to the various boat crews who did their very best for us. All good things come to an end, and once more we were off when we slipped from the buoy on the 20th of September and returned to the Moray Firth. Even before we slipped, the first of our distinguished visitors, who were here to visit us during the second phase of the work-up, was already on board. He was the Lord Mayor of Leeds, Councillor William Hudson, who was maintaining the long-established link between the city of Leeds and HMS Ark Royal, and he also enjoyed his short stay. The next few days were very busy, especially from the VIP aspect, with Wednesday the 21st being the big day. First, the Sea Lord, Admiral Sir Terence Lewin, GCB, MVO, DSC and ADC, accompanied by Mr. Russell Wood, the Deputy Treasurer of the Royal Household, were embarked by a helicopter from RAF Lossiemouth. Then Commander His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales arrived. The official reason for the visit of Prince Charles was to gain some practical experience of fixed-wing flying carrier operations from HMS Ark Royal. The Prince arrived in a Buccaneer of 809 Squadron, piloted by the commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Tony Morton, and the recovery at 11:45 was carefully observed by the knowledgeable goofers. During the next few hours, both Prince Charles and the First Sea Lord made separate visits to the mess decks and to various parts of the ship, including Flyco, where the flying operations were observed. The main purpose of the Prince's visit was to experience a steam catapult launch, and he's the first member of the royal family ever to do this. After yet another photographic session by the press, who were covering the event, the aircraft and its occupants were ready for launching from the waste catapult at 15:45. All went well before leaving the area. Lieutenant Commander Morton brought the Buccaneer in for a low-level pass of Ark's port side. The First Sea Lord departed on the 22nd and sent us the following signal. "Thank you for an exhilarating 24 hours and for looking after me so well during such a busy period. Best wishes to you all for a successful work-up and deployment." The next visitor that week was Dr. John Gilbert MP, Minister of State for Defence, and was accompanied by the Flag Lieutenant to the Admiralty Board, Lieutenant Commander Prentice, and they arrived from RAF Lossiemouth on the 23rd, and this visit followed a similar pattern to that of Prince Charles. However, Dr. Gilbert launched and then recovered on board Ark in a Buccaneer before returning to Lossiemouth by an 824 Squadron seeking helicopter. Throughout the week, flying continued as normal as far as possible, and other departments went about their usual routines, and the week ended quietly with a typical Sunday at sea approach, except for the weather, which prevented any form of flight deck recreational activity because of the gale force winds. The Guided Weapons Department had good reason to be pleased with themselves this week, as there were 2 successful firings of the Martel missile at the Aberporth range from Buccaneers of 809 Squadron launched from Ark Royal. The second week of this phase of the workup also had its share of visitors. The major group to visit were the NATO Defence Review Committee on the 28th. Although flying continued during the week, most people's minds were thinking of the weekend ahead and the ship's official visit to Hamburg. On completion of night flying on Wednesday the 28th of September, the ship headed southwards and left the safety of Moray Firth to cross the North Sea. By the morning of the 30th, the ship was in the vicinity of the River Elbe estuary, and the start of a long day for Special Sea dutymen began. The 70-mile journey inland took up all the remaining daylight hours, and the ship finally berthed at 1900 at Hamburg. What can be said about our first foreign port of call of this deployment? Probably the aspect foremost in all our memories will be the awful wet weather that we had during our few days' stay. But by contrast, the hospitality extended to us by the citizens of Hamburg. The city entertained the captain and 26 officers and ratings to a civic lunch at the City Hall on Monday the 3rd. Numerous visits and tours were organised, and these were superbly handled by our own Detours organisation. All were successful, as they were all free, and there were no shortage of volunteers. For those that could be spared, there was the 4-day visit by 18 officers and men to Berlin through East Germany. Conducted sightseeing tours of both East and West Berlin were organised by the party's host, the Royal Corps of Transport, and the well-known Berlin Wall, Brandenburg Gate and Checkpoint Charlie now mean something more to these men of Ark Royal. In the evenings there were the bright lights of the Reeperbahn, and possibly everyone who went ashore at night went there for one reason or another, even if it was only out of curiosity. In complete contrast, there was the visit to Hamburg State Opera House, and of course many made their own way and did their own thing, and everybody seemed to enjoy Hamburg, although it was very expensive. To show our appreciation, the ship was open to visitors over the weekend, and over 10,000 Germans and Britons braved the showers and long queues to come and see us, and the Royal Marine Band played its part by giving performances for the visitors. By Wednesday the 5th of October our visit was over, and at 08:30 we slipped from number 8 berth, and after a neat astern movement into one of the many water inlets to the dock area, the ship gained forward speed and set off on the long journey back to the North Sea, and off to the 3rd phase of the workup, in preparation for the operational readiness inspection. Our return to the Moray Firth on the 7th was in poor weather conditions, and very little fixed-wing flying took place over the next few days. However, rotary wing continued with their flying tasks, and the ship exercised shelter stations and other evolutions in readiness for the ORI. The darkened ship canvas drapes added yet another obstacle to one's movements around the ship. FOCAS, Rear Admiral Staveley, arrived on board during the afternoon of Monday the 10th, and it was hoped that everyone knew the various drills and procedures that might be asked of them. The ORI began on Tuesday the 11th of October and continued until the 12th, and throughout the period, AGRs and life jackets were common sights. The main day of the ORI was the 12th, with the emphasis on flying operations and major MBCD exercises between day and night flying. Throughout the 2 days, the command kept the ship's companies well informed of what was happening, as the FOCAS staff moved about the ship, handing out their little brown envelopes containing new evolutions. Throughout the ORI, everybody pulled their weight, and this was evident from what Admiral Staveley said to us over the ship's main broadcast just before he left us early on the 13th. He told us that we had achieved a satisfactory ORI. The final evolution before leaving the Moray Firth was a TOEX, when HMS Ark Royal towed RFA Resource during the forenoon of the 14th, another success for the Seaman branch. One of the passengers to be embarked from RAF Lossiemouth was the Right Reverend Monsignor Walmsley, Principal Roman Catholic Chaplain and Vicar General to the Royal Navy. He spent the following few days seeing us at work and at rest, as well as visiting ships in company. By 17:30 on the 14th, we were underway around the north coast of Scotland, through the Hebrides to the west coast of Ireland, and once more we experienced the Atlantic swell and gale force winds. As we rounded the southwest corner of Ireland and headed towards Cornwall on the 16th, we were joined by numerous dolphins, which gave a very different goofing view. The big autumn exercise, Ocean Safari, began at 1200 on the 17th of October, and Phocas, wearing his NATO hat as Commander Carrier Striking Group 2, embarked during the forenoon and flew his flag in HMS Ark Royal. He was CTG 401.2, and within our group were 11 surface ships of different nationalities. Other countries taking part in the exercise were the United States, Canada, Netherlands, Portugal and Germany, France and Norway, but Ark Royal was the only fixed-wing strike attack carrier taking part. The exercise, as far as we were concerned, started in the Bristol Channel off St Morgan. We headed south in a zigzag pattern across the Bay of Biscay, and by the 21st were off the Lisbon area of Portugal. Throughout the period, 824 Squadron ripple flew their helicopters, providing the ship with an ASW sector screen. The Phantoms of 892 Squadron carried out combat air patrols and medium-level air intercepts against enemy aircraft sent to test our defences. The Gannets from 849B Flight provided AEW surveillance and controlled the 809 Buccaneers, which acted as probes to search the surrounding areas and identify contacts seen by the Gannets' radar display. On the 21st of October, the Buccaneers carried out attacks on the Portuguese range just outside Lisbon. They were again busy back at the Bay of Biscay when they were tasked to deliver attacks to the Stuttgart region of Germany. As the exercise drew to a close, all the aircraft continued their appropriate primary roles, and 824 continued until the final whistle at 23:59 on the 28th of October, by which time it had clocked over 400 flying hours of almost continuous flying during the exercise. Once Phocas and his staff, together with the exercise umpires, had disembarked on the morning of the 28th of October to Portland, we set off to continue our deployment. Before we left UK waters, the ship received the following signal from Admiral Staveley. During Ocean Safari 77, the first major NATO exercise for many of you in this great ship, Ark Royal has gone from strength to strength in improving her operational capability and working with our allies. Well done, keep up the good work. Ark Royal was now on her way to Gibraltar, and so we retraced our journey south across the Bay of Biscay and along the Portuguese coast. En route we had time to relax, and Sunday the 30th was our first Sunday at sea routine for a number of weeks, and many activities had been organised. 50-knot winds over the flight deck did not deter the contestants in the interpart obstacle race. The competition was won by a team from B Unit in a time of 5 minutes and 37 seconds. For the less energetic, there was the Great Ark Royal Conker contest, the conkers having been collected during the ship's visit to Hamburg by the PT staff. The first knock was between the captain and the commander, in which the latter won, but he didn't progress beyond the next round, and the knockout competition was eventually won by Band Corporal Tim Syme Rumsby, and the successful event raised £12.50 for ship's charities. Late in the afternoon on 2 deck, the chefs started the Christmas celebrations with the ceremonial Christmas pudding stir. The captain performed the honours, and real Pusser's rum left over from the Jubilee review was added by the then youngest man on board, Junior MEM David Grieve, with help from the galley staff. Monday the 31st of October was our last night in the Atlantic before the warmth of the Mediterranean, and a band concert on the quarterdeck was well received. The ship finally berthed at Southmole at 17:30 on Tuesday the 1st of November, just before sunset. The length of our stay was to be very short, a matter of 24 hours, and many went ashore that evening for the first time since Hamburg, while the duty men went ashore the following forenoon. At Gibraltar, we embarked 6 members of the Committee of Loys, headed by the Deputy Chairman, Mr. Finlay, and they remained with us until Malta. The committee has a long-standing association with the Royal Navy, and in particular HMS Ark Royal, and over a period of years has presented the ship with many gifts, including Ark Royal's TV system, video equipment, and a complete wardroom library. By 18:30 on the 2nd, the ship was on her way again, but this time eastwards across the Mediterranean, and what a difference in the weather, with clear blue skies, the sun blazing down and very little wind, temperature well into the 70s. Despite the lack of wind, the Air World managed to do some flying while off the coast of Sardinia on the 4th. 824 once again beat the fixed wing as it was airborne on the 3rd, practising emergency procedures and taking fresh bread to HMS Plymouth. During the early hours of the 5th, we were off the northwest tip of the Maltese group of islands and we entered Grand Harbour in Procedure Alpha. Witnessing our entry was Flag Officer Malta, with the President of the Republic of Malta, the British and Australian High Commissioners and the Italian, German and French ambassadors. With the aid of tugs, the ship was ceremoniously backed into the Calcara Creek and secured between two buoys. For some of the ship's company, the Malta visit was a holiday, as they took leave to be with families or wives and girlfriends who had flown out from the UK. For the remainder of us, there was much to be done and a lot of hard work to get through. The Seaman Department continued what it had started in Gibraltar by helping civilian dockyard workers with the painting of the ship's side. The Maltese painted below 3 deck, while our own seamen were the ones hanging from the nets above 3 deck. The flight deck was soon looking itself again, with the red, white, yellow and green breaking up the vast expanse of grey. When all the painting was complete, the Ark Royal looked in a far better condition than the worse-for-wear appearance of our arrival. Down in the depths of the ship, the ME department was extremely busy, as much machinery was shut down, providing a golden opportunity for maintenance work to be carried out. The WE department was also able to carry out maintenance on their equipment, and new aerials were fitted above 3 deck. 800 officers and ratings took part in some sport activity, and the highlight was the convincing defeat of HMS Fearless in the first round of the Maxi Ships Cup. In the ITSA knockout competition against RFA Lucca, the AED team came through as worthy overall winners, and the members of the 4RO mess continued their money-raising efforts by having a sponsored walk around Malta and raised over £600. In addition to the official receptions and visits by service and political representatives on the island, there was a considerable coming and going by others. Once more we were subjected to the boats routine if we wished to go ashore. And if we wished to go ashore, the ship's boats and the official contract boats were well supported by the DISOs. The weather at Malta was very pleasant and warm, and most of us looked more tan than when we arrived, and after a very enjoyable week, we were off on our travels again, and when we left Grand Harbour on Saturday the 12th of November, we set off for the French port of Toulon. After an early fixed-wing fly-ex on Sunday the 13th, just to give the aircrew a chance to see if they could remember how to fly, the rest of us settled down to peace and quiet. Being Remembrance Day, a non-denominational service was held on the quarterdeck with the Royal Marine Band accompanying the hymns, and the captain gave the address and led the act of remembrance. During the day, to the north of us, the well-known Mistral winds was gathering strength off the Mediterranean French coast, and in the early hours of Monday the 14th, the ship ran into gale-force winds and high seas. This retarded our progress and prevented us from anchoring in Toulon harbour. Instead of our expected visit to Toulon, we remained at sea, riding out the rough conditions, and quite a number seemed happier about us being there than at anchor. While off Toulon, the exercise briefs took place in Toulon in preparation for the French-sponsored multinational exercise Isle d'Or. Besides the French and UK forces taking part, the other countries invited were the United States, Italy, Holland, Greece and Canada. HMS Ark Royal and USS Saratoga were the only carriers taking part in the exercise, but there was a lot of air activity from ashore to accompany us. The official start of the exercise was at noon on Wednesday the 16th of November, but very little seemed to happen, and although some flying did take place, a number of departments continued repairing the damage sustained during the previous few days' weather. The first part of the exercise was classed as a work-up phase, where each ship tended to do its own thing. Once more, darkened ship canvas screens went up and the groping sessions began. Throughout this phase, we operated off the west coast of Corsica. The tactical phase began on the 20th, and as hostilities escalated, we became more involved in the exercise, with all 4 squadrons doing their own specialty. Towards the end of the exercise, we were directed away from operating off Corsica and Sardinia to the southeast of the Balearic Islands. While the exercise went on, Ark Royal was having her own private war with the elements. The seas, caused by the Mistral winds, which blew on and off throughout the exercise, caused the flight deck to go out of limits on several occasions, and thus curtailing the flying programme at times. As our group tracked towards Toulon and the exercise drew to a close, the Mistral again set in with a vengeance, and the exercise came to a premature end as all the ships taking part struggled with the elements. The weather improved as Ark Royal left the Toulon area on her way to her next port of call, Naples, and light winds were a pleasant change after our Mistral-dominated exercise. During the week's visit to Naples, most had the chance of seeing something in the surrounding areas. Detours, in collaboration with the Alosci brothers of Naples, organised many tours, which included visits to Vesuvius, Pompeii, the Amalfi Coast, Sorrento, the island of Capri, Rome, and even a papal audience on Wednesday the 30th. Besides the official tours, many made their own arrangements to other local points of interest. Memories flood back of the cheap food and the cheap wine, the incredible driving, the Dobie lines and the bonfires. Most of us liked Naples, and for once there was no boat routine, and we were sorry to depart on the morning of Monday the 5th of December. This passage had its moments, and on Wednesday the 8th we saw two significant events. The aircraft managed to get back into the air for the first time in over a week, and the sick bay performed its 100th operation since leaving Devonport. The final evolution before Gibraltar was yet another TOEX, in which Ark was pulled by the Leander frigate HMS Ariadne. Our arrival at Gibraltar on the 8th of December gave us one last chance to buy a few remaining Christmas presents. Once again, the weather triumphed when the top of the rock race was cancelled at the start due to the very bad conditions at the top. Some breathed a sigh of relief, but others were genuinely disappointed, as the build-up to the race had been tremendous during the previous weeks. We left Gibraltar on the 10th of December in a westerly direction, leaving the warmth of the Mediterranean behind us as we faced the Atlantic once more. By the 12th of December we were back in the Bay of Biscay, and all the fixed-wing aircraft managed to disembark with the exception of one lonely buccaneer. However, he did manage to disembark the following day, as did the Sea Kings, leaving the ship quiet once more. The Maxi Band concert with the Royal Marine Band cheered those of us that were left on board, and the MBCDO's acts and the Coldstream Guards from our 4R2 mess were very popular. Despite the fog preventing us from going up harbour on the 15th of December, those of us whose families arrived at HMS Drake were reunited when they were brought out to us at Charlie Boy by the Paz boats. The 3.5-month deployment came to a close as we berthed on the morning of Friday the 16th of December, and the dockyard-assisted maintenance period soon got underway as dockyard personnel began to descend on the ship.